Welcome everyone to my March 8th movie collection update. Mostly Blu-rays, but we've got one VHS and some DVDs this time around. It's been a Midwest winter, lots of cold, lots of snow, lots of ice. There's really not a whole lot you could do during that period of time, so for the past month I've just kind of been stocking up on movies that I've been watching after work and stuff. My movie collection stuff usually slows down in the summer when I'm more out and about doing more things, but for the time being, this has been my winter. Not a whole much else going on outside of that, so let's get right into it. With our first one, which is a VHS tape, and this is one of those Grail VHS tapes I've been trying to come across a copy of for so long. If you've been anywhere on the internet, you follow a lot of these movie channels, odds are you've seen clips of this, you've heard of it, it's been everywhere from Red Letter Media, JonTron. It's very notorious. It's become like a cult hit on YouTube, and that is the police training video Surviving Edged Weapons on VHS. I actually can't believe I scored a copy of this on VHS. The seller I got it from even put it in this nice plastic case. I believe this is on YouTube for free if you want to check it out. Like I said, JonTron, Red Letter Media, there's been a lot of coverage on this. It's just a wacky police training video about surviving edged weapons. And this includes pens and samurais, you know, the stuff you encounter on a day-to-day basis out in public. Yeah. As soon as I had the opportunity to grab this, I just jumped right on it. I'm not a huge VHS collector. I just pick, you know, oddball stuff like this up. And this is a fun one. Intended for law enforcement only, by the way. So, there we go. Surviving Edged Weapons. Moving on to the Blu-rays, which, as I've said, I think I said in the last update, I'm starting the process of trying to migrate as much of my collection to Blu-ray as I can. I've been upgrading a lot of my DVDs to Blu-ray, which I'm not showing those in these updates because a lot of them are repeats. It's like, why talk about them again? So going into the Blu-rays for this time, we've got, I didn't know this was a thing until it got announced a month or two ago on the Vinegar Syndrome site, and I was like, they made a documentary about the Clue movie? And Clue is one of my favorite comedies ever. I love Clue. So I was so excited to check out Who Done It, the Clue documentary. And it really pains me to report that I did not like it. I give credit to Jeff C. Smith, the guy that made this. It was a passion project of his that took over 5 years. I think he said he started this in 2017. It's got actors from the movie including Colleen Camp, Michael McKean, Leslie Ann Warren, Lee Ving. A majority of it is with the writer-director, Jonathan Lynn, and he's got an author in there and some other fans. But the production value is really cheap on this. You could tell this one guy made this over 5 years, but I won't knock that if the documentary is really good and has substance. And unfortunately, I did not find much substance with anything, because there's nothing. There's a little bit with the costume designer, a little bit. There's a little bit with the guys that did the matte paintings, but unfortunately their entire interview consists of them saying they don't remember shit about the movie. And so when you're talking to the actual people, like, there's a little bit with the casting director talking about who else was offered roles. And Jonathan Lynn talks about the script and John Landis and how hard it was to find a writer for Clue, but there's minimal about the actual production. When he's talking to all the actors, it's just them saying, oh, they were such a good person to work with. Oh, we just had the most fun times. There's nothing about the actual making of the movie, though. And then the entire second half of it is devoted to the fan base of Clue. So he's talking to internet people who have just seen Clue for the first time recently and reacted to it, and collectors, and at the end he's like, oh, visit my website if you want to hear these stories about how I've got voicemails from Martin Mull. And why isn't that in the documentary? Like, it was a valiant effort by the guy that made this, but at the end of the day, I hate that I'm saying this because I was really looking forward to this because I love Clue, but budget aside, just you're looking at the content of this documentary, and quite honestly, it's not good. You know, kudos to you, Jeff. I'm glad you got your product made, but it left me wanting a lot more, and I wasn't satisfied with the little information that was presented in it. And same with this. I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. In the last update, I showed Pearl, which I bought blindly at Target because it was sitting there. I figured I'd check it out. I knew it was a prequel, so seeing it first, you know, I figured it wouldn't matter. And I'm kind of glad that I watched that one first, because Pearl surprised me. I actually enjoyed that movie, and I didn't think I would. So I'm like, well, I gotta see the original that everyone's going crazy about, Ty West's X. Had I not watched Pearl first, I don't even think I could have finished this. This was terrible. And I know many people who have said this is one of the best horror films in the past decade, best of the year when it came out last year, and it's just, this is revolutionary to so many horror fans out there. What the fuck movie did they all watch that I didn't watch? Because I watched an hour of being bored as hell following these people making a porno, and then for the last 30 minutes you have the shittiest performances in old people makeup. People that praise the old people, I don't know what they're talking about, because so you have an hour-long drama of people making a porn film, and then in the last half hour this turns into a slapstick comedy with two people, an old man and old woman makeup. The worst acting, the makeup looks terrible on both of them. I don't know why Mia Goth had to play both parts. She did amazing in Pearl. And for the Maxine character, she's fine. But her in the old woman makeup was laughable. There's not a second of this movie that I would consider horror. It goes from boring, making a porno, to slapstick comedy, and then it's over. I liked Pearl a lot. So this isn't an A24 Ty West. No. I recommended Pearl. That surprised the hell out of me. I really liked that one. This, I don't see. I'm sorry, guys, but I don't see it. If you want to see a good thriller that had me on the edge of my seat and had me really wanting to see where it was going, well, then let me direct your attention to Arlington Road with Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins. Somehow, one that was never on my radar. Never heard of this one before, and I watched it, and it's actually really damn good. It's suspenseful. It's one in a long line of 90s movies, whether it be Die Hard with a Vengeance, speaking of Jeff Bridges, Blown Away, Live Wire, the serial bombers. It's a whole thing in the 90s. The 90s had a million movies about bombs and bombings. This is like if you took that premise and you mixed it with The Burbs, because that's what this reminded me of, where Jeff Bridges is really suspicious of his neighbor Tim Robbins and he thinks he's a terrorist. Coincidentally, Jeff Bridges teaches a college course on terrorism, and Joan Cusack is in this, and she manages to somehow be terrifying. It's awesome. Like, it's a movie with a clear message. By the time the movie is over, you really feel the whole moral and the takeaway that the screenwriter wanted you to get from it. And it's really well handled. It's a really solid, great political thriller that gets very suspenseful by the end, and it definitely takes some turns that you might not expect with it. So this was a really good one. I read that they're trying to turn that into a TV show or something. I don't know how that would work, but new Arrow video release of The Vagrant. I had heard about this one for a long time. I always remember seeing this cover, and rest in peace Bill Paxton. I really like him in a lot of movies, so I wanted to see more that he was in, so picked up this. Arrow Video always does an excellent job with their releases, so I'm happy to support them. This is not a horror movie at all. This is 100% a comedy, a paranoid. Just by the opening credits with music that sounds like it's from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's produced by Mel Brooks, which was interesting. Very goofy. It's very tongue-in-cheek. Some of the humor lands, some of the humor doesn't. Overall, I was kind of middle on the road with this one. Some of it is funny. There's a running gag with 911 that I thought was actually pretty good. It's not exactly the most interesting. Bill Paxton does the best with what he has in this. Always good to see Michael Ironside in something. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's goofy, it's silly, and it's just something I was kind of middle of the road on. I wish it would have taken a more consistent tone or been just a little bit more streamlined with what it was. Now this one, I had somehow never heard of this one, but as soon as I saw the cast, I knew I had to see it, and I knew I would most likely love it, which I did. Steve Guttenberg, Daniel Stern, Mickey Rourke, Kevin Bacon, Tim Daly, Paul Reiser, and Ellen Barkin. As soon as I saw those names, I'm like, this is going to be something I like. And it's Diner. It doesn't even really have a strong plot. It's just kind of a snapshot in the life of these adolescent guys in the 50s. You've got young, Kevin Bacon, Daniel Stern. I think this was Tim Daly's first role. Mickey Rourke and Steve Guttenberg. It made me nostalgic for the 50s. And I've never really been a mega fan of the 1950s or wanted to go back. I was feeling nostalgic for this time period, even though I've never experienced it before. The soundtrack, the visuals, just the way, the banter with all these guys is just so excellent. I cannot recommend this highly enough. It kind of reminded me of the movie Big Wednesday, which was like a surfing movie that had Gary Busey, Jan Michael Vincent, and William Catt in it. But this one might even be better. And I love that poster, too. Like, that's such a good poster. This is one of two pickups I got in this update with Danny McBride, who is someone I really was not familiar with. I had never seen any of his work. I've seen the new Halloween trilogy. I'm not a fan of pretty much any of the three of those, but it wasn't intended, but I got this and another Danny McBride thing, which I'll show at the end. And this, I saw it had, Luke Wilson, Caitlin Olsen, decent cast, dark comedy thriller. Arizona, because if there's one thing that is crying to make a suspenseful comedy thriller movie out of, it's the housing crisis of 2008. Didn't land. When it was supposed to be thrilling, I didn't think it was that thrilling because I thought Danny McBride his character is just an idiot. So you don't take him seriously as a threat. But then the comedy doesn't land, so you're not really laughing at it either. So you have this whole movie which just kind of falls flat. Yeah, just didn't do much for me. Now this one I got it because, Paul Walker, Gary Busey, every update, get one with two of them, and this was my Gary Busey one of the update, and crying shame that I had not gotten to this earlier, Chris Farley. Chris Farley and David Spade in Black Sheep, also featuring Tim Matheson and Gary Busey, of course. And this is fun, especially because I work for the local municipality, and next month on April 4th is Super Tuesday, so the new board members get elected, so everyone at my work with the village is really high-strung now into election mode. So this was a very timely watch for me as well, and it was great. I had a great laugh with it. There's a good chunk of this movie that essentially turns into The Great Outdoors 2, the John Candy film, which nowhere, that is a classic film. This is nowhere on the level of that, mind you, but this is still a great time. Chris Farley, David Spade, the physical comedy that Chris Farley was, like there's a point in here where they're in a parking lot passing out flyers, and Chris Farley does like a cartwheel. He's like, "Hey, ma'am, vote for..." It's the best. And then there's the whole tangent where it turns into The Great Outdoors 2, and then the political sabotage ending where Gary Busey comes back into the full front as this crazy war veteran living in a school bus. It's crazy, but a great time was had with this. Very fun time, you know. Chris Farley, absolutely gone way too soon. You gotta look after yourself. Now this one I pre-ordered. I like the Vestron Video Collector series. I've got, not all of them, but I've got a few of their releases, and these movies have been on my radar for quite some time. I'm saying that a lot, aren't I? So I'm like, well, it just got a new remastered, new Blu-ray from Vestron. Let's check these out. And it's a double feature of The Dentist and The Dentist 2 with Corbin Burnson. I didn't like either of them. The first one has glimmers of cleverness to it. Directed by Brian Yuzna, screenplay by Richard Dane. See, these needed Larry Cohen. Give this premise to Larry Cohen, and you would have a phenomenal film. There's glimmers of cleverness and wit to the first one. The second one starts really boring. There's a cameo by Clint Howard that's kind of funny, and it gets really crazy in the ending, like where he's rubbing the blood all over his... I don't know. The second one was too stupid for me. That one didn't do it. And the first one, it was fine. It was fine, but it just felt bland. The saving grace, if you will, with it were the close-up shots of actual dental. Like, there's a close-up shot of an actual tooth being pulled. Like, that kind of stuff in there, you know, gets to you, but it's almost kind of a cheat, because it's like, well, no shit, that's going to be. So, yeah, in the hands of someone like Larry Cohen, I think it would have been amazing. It's a good release, you know, it's filled with tons of special features and stuff, but like I said, it just didn't do it for me, either one of them. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm really disappointing my horror friends this update. This was awesome. I never saw this before, but I saw the cast. The plot instantly sold me. So I'm like, oh, come on, this has to be good. And it was. And that is Four Brothers, directed by John Singleton, rest in peace. Mark Wahlberg, Tyrese Gibson. I love Tyrese. You know, I'm a Fast and the Furious fanboy. I love Roman Pierce. And Tyrese is basically playing Roman Pierce in this film as well. So that made it fun. This is a film that does the rare thing where it perfectly balances strong, sad emotions, thrilling, badass action, and laugh-out-loud comedy. Somehow this does it all perfectly. That is rare. And it just a testament to how great this is. The four adopted brothers, they were the four kids that nobody else would adopt, so the one old lady took them all in. Fast forward, she gets killed, and now our boys got to solve her murder and deliver justice. And excellent crime, thriller, action, drama, comedy film. The comedy's mostly thanks to Tyrese, but it doesn't take you out of the movie and it doesn't break the tone. It's perfect. I really, really love this one. Highly recommend if you have not seen that one yet. And now, on a philosophical note, we're going to get deep. That's right, I'm going to get deep on you guys. With Deep Blue Sea and Deep Rising. Two 90s creature features And I can recommend both of them for pretty much the same reasons. Deep Blue Sea, Rennie Harlan, love Rennie Harlan. You got LL Cool J in there, so it's like a reunion of well, not a reunion because this came first, but in the last update I showed Mindhunters, which was a Rennie Harlan movie that had LL Cool J, and I love that one. Well, here we go. You've also got Thomas Jane, Michael Rappaport, Samuel L. Jackson, Stellan Skarsgård, Saffron Burrows. It's Deep Blue Sea. I have a feeling most of you watching this have probably seen it. You know what it is. It's a creature feature monster movie with a strong sense of humor. It knows exactly what it's making. You know, you ate my bird. And it genuinely surprised me at the end with which characters ended up surviving and which ones didn't. So it surprised me in that regard. So what else can I say about Deep Blue Sea? It's a total crowd-pleasing B creature feature. And I can pretty much echo the exact same sentiments with Deep Rising, starring Treat Williams. Not quite as much character or script work in that one, because the plot of this is really simple. They break onto this luxury cruise ship to rob it, and when they get on the ship, oh shit, everyone's dead, there's monsters. So there's not really a lot of characterization, there's not really a lot of plot depth, but for a movie like this, you do not need it, because it stays entertaining 100% of the way. I could have used a little bit more depth into the characters with this one, because you really don't feel much for too many of them. They're all very surface level characters. But Treat Williams has enough natural charisma. Kevin J. O'Connor playing kind of the geeky guy of the group. So that made this... I would put these both on a pretty equal playing field. Like, they're both just fun, ridiculous, totally self-aware 90s creature features. So, strong recommendation for both. Now what? Okay, next up is Runaway Train, which I know is a very highly regarded action film. Jon Voight and Eric Roberts. Judging from the online word of mouth that this has with how highly regarded it is, I'm going to say right now it's overrated, because quite honestly, everyone said this is a thought-provoking, tear-jerker, deep movie with a meaning. Yeah, I didn't really see that in this. I mean, for the first... It's a 110-minute movie. For the first 90 minutes, it's just a crazy canon action film, and then in the last 5-10 minutes, it randomly becomes really metaphorical and poetic, to the point where it was kind of jarring. And because this is a movie, you have the ending, which is famous for being really deep, really thought-provoking. It has a Shakespeare quote on the screen. But yet earlier in the movie, a guy was having his head shoved in a piss-filled toilet. So I don't know. I guess you could call this the thinking man's Speed. I mean, I liked it. I didn't dislike it. I was certainly entertained. But I was just like, yeah, I know this was nominated for Oscars and stuff. Yeah, definitely overrated in the Ken book of stuff, but it's still fine for what it is. Again, probably making people mad left and right. Last Blu-ray was for the Paul Walker collection. It's the first movie of the Skulls series. I have zero intention of watching any of the sequels they made for that. This is as late 90s of a thriller as they come. That said, though, Paul Walker I want to give extreme credit to, because he does excellent. When you get to the third act, Paul Walker stretches his acting chops in this farther than I would have pictured him doing so. So Craig T. Nelson plays his dad. Christopher McDonald is in there from Happy Gilmore. There's a misprint, though, on the back of this Blu-ray case. It says it's 2 hours and 12 minutes long. This was the last film I watched for this entire update. And I was putting this one off because I read the plot, but I'm just like, this thing is 2 hours and 12 minutes? That's wrong. This is 1 hour and 40 minutes. So if you see that on the back of the Blu-ray, don't, And speaking of Paul Walker, It's directed by Rob Cohen, who did the original The Fast and the Furious. So, there you go. Late 90s as hell, Scream-era thriller, you know, completely, you know, if you remember the stone cutters from The Simpsons, well, if they took that and made it a thriller. But, you know, that being said, it's still a fine, perfectly serviceable watch, if not one with a lot of rewatch value to it. Now, going into the DVDs, speaking of The Fast and the Furious, this one boasts better than The Fast and the Furious. Lawrence Fishburne in Biker Boyz. I got this just because I was hoping to see some radical 2003 nostalgia. And this gives it to you in spades. Kid Rock is even in it. The movie's not good, though. It's very by the numbers, and yeah. It ain't no Fast and the Furious. The, you know, stunts are good and everything. Lawrence Fishburne's good, but just, it's not really a lot to say about Biker Boyz. Now this one, this found me out of nowhere. I had never heard of it. You guys ever hear of this movie that Fangoria put out called Slashers? It is a, I don't know if you call it found footage or not. The movie, it's The Running Man, but with these slasher killers on a Japanese game show, and it's filmed through the lens like it's a Nickelodeon game show. So imagine The Running Man as a Japanese game show with slasher killers, but it's filmed like a Nickelodeon show from the 90s. And it's impressive because a lot of this is made to look like it's one continuous take with invisible cuts. So I do give the filmmakers Maurice Devereaux credit for being ambitious with this. And there's a lot of special features on it too, none of which I have looked into yet, but I'm honestly really curious to do so. This is bonkers. This is crazy. It's not particularly good, but at the same time, it's so weird that I was totally on board with watching it. Every single actor in this is terrible. Every single person on screen cannot act to save their life, but because everybody is so consistently terrible, it somehow saves the movie and makes it just consistent. And it flows good, and the gore scene, it's like you're watching some weird lost public access TV footage of a haunted house attraction. Like, it's, this is a weird one, guys, and I don't know how commonplace this is or how readily available it is, but when I got the premise of it and I watched this, I was just like, what the hell? Slashers, like, everyone, like, the main girl in that movie is the most mopey person I think I've ever seen in my life. Her entire screen time is, like, it's ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous, On the Line with Mel Gibson, a movie that starts off like a routine phone booth-esque thriller in a radio station where Mel Gibson plays this Howard Stern type character. For the majority of the movie's fine. It's like a routine thriller. But where this thing excels, this has the biggest fuck you ending any film I think has ever had. I was watching this and I was speechless when it got to the double twist ending reveal. I was like, did they just fucking do this? And then they do it. I'm just like, what? So this film says literally fuck you to the audience more than any other film I've ever seen in my life, all in the ending. And I kind of respect it for that. It's a terrible film that I urge everyone to watch, and watch with as little knowledge as you possibly can. This thing is a trip. Almost done, guys. We've got this thriller. For some reason, this one's not on Blu-ray yet, but it was really good. Unknown about the six guys that wake up in a warehouse. None of them have any memory of who they are or how they got there, but they find out some of them are kidnappers and some of them are hostages. So it's this thriller about these guys trying to work together to get their memory back and find out what exactly is going on. And that being said, this was really good. It was really well put together. The fact that this doesn't have a Blu-ray or anything, I have not been able to find too much information on it. Sadly leads me to believe it flew under the radar. You know, it's not the most earth-shattering thing, but as a thriller, I was pulled in right from the beginning, and I was fully along with the story to see where it was going to unfold and see who these guys, who's a villain, who's not. You really get tangled up in the mystery, which is awesome to a movie like this, to the credit of it. Jim Caviezel, Greg Kinnear, Joe Pantoliano, Jeremy Sisto, Peter Stormare. Really cool, mysterious, you know, definitely in the height of things like Memento, I would say. But good. I was really along for the ride on this one. I thought it was a pretty good, underrated little thriller. This was 50 cents, so I have not even opened it yet. It's still sealed. I like a good documentary when it's about a unique topic, and I just thought, this could be interesting, and for 50 cents, you know, why not? So I have not gotten around to watching it yet, guys, I'm sorry, but I do look forward to checking out Spellbound, which is a documentary about the spelling bees and the stresses that the kids are put through and the process of going through the spelling bees. So sounds interesting. So 50 cents, why not? Sounds good. Fun tidbit about me, you know, not to brag or anything, but in 6th grade, I won the school spelling bee. Ladies, you could DM me on my Instagram and ask me for my information later. How's that sound? Okay, and it's 2 TV shows. Fastlane, which, God, I was talking with biker boys wanting early 2000s nostalgia. Jesus Christ, this is as early 2000s as it comes. I mean, look at these pictures on the back. I mean, come on. This show is incredibly stupid and needlessly flashy, but it's entertaining. Like, I did have a good time just laughing at the absurd early 2000s nature of some of these episodes. And the thing I really need to point out, there's an episode of this show called Slippery Slope. My freshman year of college philosophy teacher, Peter Canettis, is in the episode Slippery Slope, and he plays a character named Officer Sachs. So I bought this, no joke. I watched through all the other episodes, but I bought this for that episode so I could see Peter Canettis. I then screenshotted it and emailed it to him. I said, "How's it going, Officer Sachs?" And he loved it. So, here's Fastlane. And lastly, it just sounded like a funny concept for a show. I really got into the It's Always Sunny rabbit hole. I went through the entire series of that last year. Every year I try to do a new series. So 2021 was when I went through and I did Superstore. 2022 was It's Always Sunny. I'm like, okay, well, maybe this could be a show I could do this year. Eastbound and Down, sadly no relation to Smokey and the Bandit. And again, Danny McBride is just, his humor, his personality is just not doing it for me. Like, this show, it's like he's trying to be Ricky from the Trailer Park Boys. But it just, like I said, there's some jokes in here I laughed at, there's some good stuff, but most of the time it just feels just crass humor for the sake of crass humor, and I just don't really get it, or it's just not my thing, you know, so I don't know if I'll continue on with that one or not. Anyway, guys, we've made it through another update, March 8th, 2023. Thank you all for watching. We got a busy spring, busy summer, busy fall all coming, so kind of the calm start of the year is winding down, and it's time to get busy. It's time to start taking care of business. So, thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you all later.